Rigathi Gachagua has acquired property and wealth whose estimated value is 5.2 billion.
I listened to His Excellency Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's response, and there was something suspicious about the way he spoke. It felt scripted. Now, I know some of you might be asking, but Jennifer, what exactly do you mean by scripted? Well, here's the thing. When you hear the same types of explanations being used again and again, whether it's in acquiring assets, gifts, or companies, it makes you wonder, is this a well-rehearsed story, or the actual truth? My name is Jennifer Harrison, and this is LifeLens TV. Journey with me today as we unpack the Deputy President's response and see if we can connect the dots.
My little brother in his...
So Gachagua claims a significant portion of his wealth came through gifts. Gifts from friends, gifts from family, gifts from everywhere. The man has an empire and we're supposed to believe that it's built mostly on generosity? Now let's think critically about this. The Deputy President is a public figure, but the sheer volume of gifts, land, companies, even dairy farms, is remarkable. It starts to sound less like gifts, and more like a convenient way to explain away vast, unexplained wealth. Shouldn't we ask, who are these generous friends, and why are they giving such large gifts to a man already in a position of influence? And then there's the story about cows. Yes, you heard me right. Cows. Gachagua claims that every time he visited the Rift Valley, he was gifted a cow by supporters. Now don't get me wrong, I know politicians can receive gifts from their supporters. It's very common to many politicians to receive gifts as a way of showing him thanks for coming. But here's where things get a little hard to swallow. According to Gachagua, it was through these gifted cows that he built an entire dairy farm empire.
And I take this opportunity to thank my brothers from the Kalenjin community for that dairy farm. Anytime I've gone to the Rift Valley, in appreciation of the support I gave President William Ruto, the Kalenjin community always gives me a cow or two. And within 2 years, I have the largest dairy farm in Madeira constituency, courtesy of the Kalenjin people.
Really? Just from gifts? We're not talking about receiving a few cows here and there and starting a small dairy business. We're talking about building an empire, a large-scale operation. It's almost as if we're watching a soap opera where gifts magically solve every problem, and in this case, they're the secret to entrepreneurial success. It doesn't just bring out a pattern of repetitive acquisition, it feels scripted, like he's trying to convince us that the power of gifts alone transformed him into a successful dairy farmer. But let's be real here. Can you really build something as complex as a dairy farm empire purely through random gifts from supporters? Running a farm requires land, infrastructure, feed, medical care for the animals and skilled workers. The idea that a few cows gifted over time could turn into a full-blown business empire seems questionable at best. So I have to ask, are we really buying this story? Or is this just another part of a well-crafted narrative meant to make Gachagua look humble, as if he's a man who's only gotten by through the generosity of others? It feels like another instance of repeating the same theme, gifts, gifts, and more gifts. And at some point, we have to ask, are we watching reality or a well-rehearsed script? The Meru land, 80 acres, a vast plot. And how did Gachagua acquire it? Through a loan from a Sacco, he says, almost as if this loan is yet another form of a gift. But we're talking about a man who, by his own admission, lives off gifts. Why does this loan feel like another convenient explanation? When you combine all of these narratives together, gifts, dormant companies and loans, it feels like we're watching the same scene play out over and over again.
That the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, has since becoming Deputy President, acquired 80 acres of land in Meru. That is false. What is true is that the Deputy President is a member of Solution Sacco Limited, in Meru. In the process, I identified a 29-acre land and borrowed money from Solution Circle.
The Deputy President's strategy seems to be to paint himself as a man who owns almost nothing of substance. No big businesses, no vast empire, just a man who lives off gifts and loans. But how does this narrative hold up when you're connected to wealth this vast? It's almost as if he wants us to believe that he's the recipient of extraordinary luck and nothing more. But when you look at the larger picture, this version of events seems too good to be true. Gachagua's responses about his wealth feel too rehearsed. Every time there's a question about an asset, he brings up a gift. Every time there's a company with no visible activity, it's brushed off as dormant. It's the same pattern, over and over. Could this be a deliberate strategy? When you repeat the same story enough times, it becomes harder for the public to ask deeper questions. But that's exactly what we should be doing. One of the most eyebrow-raising parts of his response was when he mentioned receiving wealth from his late brother. Now, I don't know about you, but this feels like yet another gift in disguise. It's the same tactic repeated, yet again. From friends, from family, from loans, and now from his late brother.
And my late brother, in his wisdom, left Rigathi Gachagua 5% of his wealth. I was therefore able to get 20 million shillings from this sale. That is money that is in my account.
If we keep hearing the same explanation over and over, we have to start questioning its validity. But we're not buying it, are we? It's a narrative that's too clean, too rehearsed, and it's our job to ask how much of this is really true. And then we come back to the gifts. Rigathi Gachagua once again brought up this idea of blessings from above. He mentioned that when his wife, Pastor Dorcas, heard that the office of the Second Lady wouldn't be funded anymore, she started receiving gifts from friends and well-wishers to keep the office running.
The decision was made that the government will not fund the office or the spouse of the Deputy President. Kenyans of goodwill flock to her every day with cash donations, with material donations, for her to continue with a very good program she's doing of rehabilitating children.
I mean, I wish the heavens Gachagua prays to would locate me, because it seems to be raining blessings non-stop over there. Every time there's a problem, a solution just magically appears in the form of gifts. It's starting to feel like the ultimate fallback story. Can't fund the office? No problem. Gifts will arrive. Need land or companies? Just wait for the gifts. But seriously, how long can we keep accepting this as the explanation? At what point do we ask if these gifts are really gifts, or just a way to cover up other financial maneuvers? This narrative keeps repeating itself, and every time it does, it feels less and less believable. It's up to us to see through this repetitive storytelling and ask the real questions. Why is everything about Gachagua framed around generosity from others, while conveniently distancing himself from any real accountability? Now let's move on to these companies. Some of them, he claims, are dormant, completely inactive. No bank transactions, no revenue flow. So why do they exist? Why open company after company, only to let them collect dust? This is where things get even more questionable. One of the companies linked to his wife, Dorcas, doesn't even have a bank account. How does a company function without one? It's like setting up a business, but then locking the door and throwing away the key. There are dots here that just don't connect.
Spiritway Limited is a company registered by Dorcas Rigathi that does work with church ministries. This ministry has not traded, does not even have a bank account.
Could these companies be shells? Empty entities waiting to be activated when it's time to move money? Or are they simply part of the larger script? Rigathi Gachagua mentioned one in particular, Spiritway, the charity under his wife, Pastor Dorcas. Now, let's pause for a second and think about this. This is a charity. The very nature of charity work requires a constant flow of money because it's all about giving out to those in need. How can a charity function without a proper bank account? No bank transactions, no financial records. Doesn't this raise red flags for anyone else? Charities are meant to be transparent, especially when it comes to donations and financial activity. So, how is Pastor Dorcas running this charity with no visible money flow? I mean, this is the one entity that should have the most money coming in and going out. But just like with those dormant companies, Spiritway seems to be shrouded in mystery. What's really going on here? And now let's dive into one of the most telling parts of Gachagua's response, his dormant companies. He mentioned that one of these companies, which he gave to his son to manage, has been left dormant. And it's not just one company. We're talking about multiple companies, registered as far back as 2002, with no business transactions, nothing. Really? A company registered for over 2 decades and not a single business transaction? What's the point of opening company after company, only to let them sit idle? Why go through the effort and expense of creating these entities if they're not operational? It raises a lot of red flags. Why open one dormant company, let alone several, and then claim they serve no purpose? Are we supposed to believe that these businesses were opened for no reason and just left to gather dust? This is the same Deputy President who claims to be financially transparent, yet here he is, linked to numerous inactive companies. What's really going on here? But let's talk about dormant companies for a moment. Companies with no business transactions, no revenue, no activity. They might seem innocent on the surface, but they often serve other purposes. Dormant companies can be used to hide assets, avoid taxes, or worse, act as fronts for shady activities. They can hold wealth in plain sight, keeping the details away from public scrutiny. Think about it. Why would anyone open multiple dormant companies over the years if they weren't trying to achieve something beneath the surface? Dormancy doesn't mean inactivity when it comes to questionable dealings. It could be a way to stash wealth or shift money around without drawing too much attention. Are we really supposed to believe that all these companies registered in Gachagua's name were meant to do nothing for over 20 years? Or is this part of a larger scheme, something we aren't seeing yet? So here's the real question, dear viewers. What could these dormant companies really be doing? Why set up businesses with no intent to use them, especially when these companies could easily be repurposed for things we'd never know about? Don't be fooled by claims of inactivity. In the world of high finance and politics, dormancy doesn't always mean there's nothing happening. It might just mean something's happening behind closed doors. And maybe, just maybe, our Deputy President's dormancy is more active than he'd like us to believe. So where does this leave us? As Kenyans, we have a duty to question the stories our leaders tell us. Gachagua's response felt like an attempt to rewrite reality, to make us believe that his wealth came through luck and generosity, rather than power and influence. But the truth is rarely that simple. And if Gachagua wants us to accept his version of events, he'll need to provide more than rehearsed answers and repeated patterns. Until then, it's up to us to keep asking the hard questions. And that's what we'll continue to do here on LifeLens TV. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe as we dig deeper into Kenya's political landscape.